In this Roll for Credit review, we'll be going over Jurassic World, The Legacy of Isla Nublar. This is a game that spans from the Jurassic Park all the way to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdoms. Through this game, you'll be playing and using legacy components, so if you don't know, that means permanent choices of stickers, scratching things off, and other things that will evolve the game as you go through. The island will change as well as the dinosaurs and characters depending on your choices. Now, Jurassic Park is probably one of my favorite movies of all time, vying depending on what kind of mood I'm in for that #1 slot. However, not every movie in the Jurassic Park World series can claim to be that good. So the question is this game more like the original Jurassic Park or closer to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdoms? What you see here are all the components unlocked in the tutorial mission. This one is actually replayable over and over, so you can sort of get your feet and understand how the game plays before you start playing the chapters with legacy elements and you have to make permanent decisions. Now, the goal of this game is for you to play over 5 rounds and complete the objectives included in the book and in the round cards down there. Each round will start with flipping the round card at the bottom and applying the rules there. More often than not, it will include some new rules and some consequences, or I guess ways for you to flip consequence tokens throughout the game. If at any time the total value is 5 or more showing there, you lose. On your turn, you're going to have a number of action tokens based on player count. In total, there'll always be 9 action tokens divvied among the players. So in a 3-player game, each player will have 3. Whenever you take an action, flip it over to show you've completed an action. There will not be a turn order, so one person can take 1 action while another player then takes 3 after them. So it's all about discussing what you need to do and in what order would work best for your objectives. The actions you can do are run, which is moving 2 spaces, leading, which is taking a NPC character and moving them along. You can move a little faster if you move along roads or in buildings. We'll get to buildings in just a second. Searching, which involves gaining item cards. Depending on the area you're in, you'll get a different amount of item cards. There is also herding. If you're in another location with a player, you can put one of these herd tokens there. It stops the dinosaurs from activating on their turn. And more often than not, you're going to want to do it to the carnivores to stop them from eating everything in the park. Another action is trading any items or components with another player. And finally, you can heal if you're inside a building. This is where we're going to get to inside buildings. Right now, you'll notice these 2 building markers. These will actually have their own mats that I can't fit on the screen right now, but this is what they'll look like. They'll be on the table with you. And you can actually go inside the buildings. Each building is different with different token layouts. For example, this one includes a bunch of random supplies, and you'll have objectives that will usually ask you to do certain things in these buildings. For example, this one wanted you to line up 3 of a kind. It may ask for a specific kind in order to complete the objective. They also have their own special actions in the building as well that you may be able to take advantage of. The other building, by the way, involves a genetic puzzle, which required different genes to be lined up in a specific order according to the objective. Let's now talk about dinosaurs. I changed the board just a little bit to help explain things. Once everyone has gone, you're going to flip over all sector cards that were not flipped. Then dinosaurs are going to act based on what sector they're in. So you look at sector 1 first, then 2, so on and so forth. Now, herbivores always act first. So if there was another herbivore in sector 2, that would act first. But because the T-Rex is here, that one is going to trigger first. Now, there are many different symbols, but more often than not, there's moving and hunting. Hunting always tends to happen before moving. Now, when a carnivore hunts, it's going to attack whatever is in or adjacent to them. So right now there's nothing adjacent, but let's say it was over here, it would attack the barrier. Or if another dinosaur, even another carnivore was next to it, it would go over there to attack it and hunt it. But let's say it was in the spot from before where there is nothing adjacent to it. You will then roll this 20-sided amber die, and depending on the number that is revealed, it's going to teleport to that zone and hunt anything in that zone, not adjacent. So in this case, horrible luck, this landscaper is gonna get munched. And depending on the NPCs or other dinosaurs, they may force you to flip over consequence tokens if they take damage equal to their health. Now, let's look at something that has a little bit more than 1 life. So be it another player, for example. A dinosaur is going to have a defensive stat, that's only if they're attacked, but also a might stat if they're a carnivore. That's the number of dice they're going to roll. Now, the symbols are what you're going to match up to see if something gets damaged. Now, right now it is attacking this player, and unfortunately their 1 natural defense doesn't block any of that. So they're going to take 3 damage. That's way too much. All characters have 2, but you do not get knocked out unlike other dinosaurs or NPCs. You just flip over consequence tokens. But let's say we were able to roll this, which is a much nicer roll. You're going to block 1 and take 1 damage using a token to mark that you've been injured. So keep that in mind that you can only take another one or heal inside a building. Yes, by the way, dinosaurs can still find you if you're inside a building. There will also be some items that can help you defend against dinosaur attacks. Usually after hunting, they will then move in a direction if they can. If they hit a wall, they just stop moving. Once all dinosaurs have finished their turn, you're going to replace the revealed sector cards with new sector cards, and then reveal the new round and do any new rules or setup that needs to be done. Then you'll continue the game until you either finish 5 rounds, reveal too many consequence tokens, and see whether you have won or lost. You will then have the option to move on to the next seal envelope, making sure to add back in whatever should stay within the envelope, as some things will be carried out throughout the game. For example, you probably can guess the T-Rex is going to stay around for quite some time versus things that are specific to the scenario. A few more things to show off before we leave the overhead. There are also some round cards you can keep track of, and rules are actually going to be added to this little rule card here, or rule ring, where you can look it up and it goes alphabetical in order to find whatever you're looking for. Finally, I haven't done this yet here, but this claw is included as a first player marker, but also this is what you use to scratch off when you unlock abilities or anything else that needs to be revealed during the Legacy gameplay. Now, before we continue, this is going to be a bit more of a spoilery section, but I'm going to stamp it off so you can skip it if you really want to. The idea is here, I'm going to talk a bit more about the not like very specific things, more of universal Legacy components and mechanics you'll learn, just in case you want to know more about what may go on during the game, even if it's something you unlock a little bit later on. So first thing, let me get this quickly out of the way. You will be unlocking a character after every game. 2, if you win the scenario. You'll also unlock a research folio, and throughout the game you can research dinosaurs, and the more you research, the more you can unlock better bonuses, such as, usually my favorite, unlocking more upgrades and or dinosaur health, because if dinosaurs die, you get more consequences. So keeping them alive tends to be very helpful. Now, speaking of dinosaurs, and this one actually is almost obvious as soon as you open the box. There are more dinosaurs to unlock. So you're going to get more figures, some of them herbivore, some of them carnivore, some of them woo creations. You'll earn these as you progress through the game, depending on wins and losses. So I will leave it to you to discover and choose which ones you unlock. Most of them are not story driven. So sometimes you may unlock the obvious carnivore from one of the movies, while at the same time, you may unlock someone who played a more smaller part throughout the series. Now, next, the big thing I want to talk about is storms. If you looked closely at the sector cards I was flipping over, you may have noticed storm warning. This will move up a storm sticker that you later put up on the top of the board, and when that hits the top, there is a power outage that pretty much shuts down every building, all your electric fences, almost the entire board. You lose a lot of actions. You got to go back in there just like in the original Park game, pump it, and then turn it back on. This is a bit annoying because the way you do it is through a bit of a dexterity game, and also, like I said, it shuts things down, and sometimes that can take longer than most, and it just feels really bad. So that is going to be probably, while there are plenty of problems that will come throughout the game, that's going to be one of the ones that's going to throw the wrench, at least for us, more often than not, because it limits your problems to deal with almost, well, any other problem. Another big major component I want to mention really quick, and it's going to be very hard because I want to mention it in the non-spoiler section, are the characters. I mentioned before that they can unlock things, but you can also unlock a back part here where you are going to be able to use them in addition to the characters you choose, because you won't always have access to the same characters depending on the story, as it sticks with the canon of who's around during that time in the movie. But you can still have like a support version of them in the background as a character, but only up to 3 times. So that's a way for you, while you're going through the campaign, to be like, we really need to make sure we have the building person or the escort person along with us, even if they're not technically available as one of the playable characters. So that's another little nice way you unlock characters. And by the way, unlocking a power on their front side unlocks their back too, so you don't feel penalized for upgrading someone who is no longer available. They still are going to give you a nice bonus. The final thing I want to talk about is budget. You'll unlock this pretty quickly along with the upgrade thing I mentioned before. Pretty much you're going to earn budget depending on what you do, win or lose throughout the game. And then that will be carried on to the next one. It's very similar to Pandemic Legacy, where you can sort of use that if you're winning or losing to try to give you a little bit more of an edge. Except here, instead of just throwing cards into a deck, you can buy things like goats to distract carnivores, or even other new stickers to put on the board to make permanent changes, things of that nature. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Other than that, most of it is just going to be things that I think you can leave to discover for yourself. Obviously, you're going to add more rules to that little ring binder. When you hit world, you're going to add a bunch of stuff because there's a big time skip and things change then. And a couple other things that may be a bit more scenario specific. So I think I'll leave it to you to play through and find out what's going on in this park. So in terms of playing the game, a lot of the rounds, or not rounds, I guess games, are relatively short. You play through only 5 rounds. And relatively speaking, I think it's not too hard to discuss what you want to do, make decisions. And rarely did I feel like there are a couple times where you're like, oh, there's not much for me to do with my action. I'm not going to do much. No, you usually could dock like, oh, I'll go there and do this. So I will say felt pretty engaged for the most part. And also those shorter games worked well because one, I like playing back-to-back Legacy games. It feels like I'm progressing through the story pretty well. And two, there is some randomness here. There are a couple times where a loss can occur in particular. And this is where this is definitely going to be a miss spoiler, but there were times when the round 5 card can make or break a scenario, and like we didn't find out the end game condition until then. So it was like, oh, we should have known this before. But because they're so short, it's sort of a, oh, this stinks. Well, let's do another one. We almost always played back to back. The exception was when we tried with 4 players. You see, for this entire campaign, and the exception of that one, we played with, or it was me with 2 other people. So a 3-man game. There are always 9 actions between all characters, regardless of your player count. That means that if you add a 4th person in, everyone gets 2 with 1 free action that someone can use during a round. We felt like when you got to 4 players, you always felt like you needed that one more action to do something. Even the person who wasn't playing through it, because we did the 4-person game, I think like game 3 or 4. Like we had a couple games under our belt, not the first one. They didn't even feel like they had enough actions to do what they needed or wanted on a turn. I didn't try with 2 players, but I have a feeling that's going to be the opposite, where you don't feel like you have enough people. I hate to say this, but even though this game says 2 to 4, it's 3. Even if the actions, it seems to make sense, there's always 9 actions. It doesn't feel great for the person unless they have the right amount. Now, if you choose to follow what I say and play with 2 other players, or maybe you go with the 2 to 4 count, one of the things that's really nice are the characters you play as. Chapters pretty much say you can play with these characters, pretty much the ones who should be or were around for that movie. You'll unlock new characters this way as well. And what's nice about this is in some other Legacy games, I feel if you have a choice of characters, sometimes there's that really obvious one. I feel guilty. Pandemic's the obvious example for me. I'm going to keep referring to that because it's the Legacy game everyone knows. But I can't remember, scientist or researcher who lets you give cards to other people. I always feel like that one had to be around. Here you're forced to swap out. I won't say how or why if you can go to the spoiler section. That doesn't mean you necessarily lose that character. I'll leave it at that for now. But this allows you to change things up, unlock new characters, try out new characters, and for the most part, I think a lot of them have been pretty good. In fact, there is one character, I won't say who, but movie-wise, you would not think would be able to make a big impact, but turned out to be very helpful in some of our games. But moving on from there, the other thing I really want to mention is the unlocking and leveling up. Without spoiling anything, it's really fun. Because it's shorter rounds, you tend to unlock things pretty quickly and scratching things off, seeing what you get. And then, of course, for me, unlocking dinosaurs. This is the raptor, so no spoilering here, but it was so much fun to get a new little figure, new ability, a new guy on the map. It really felt like if I had to compare it to the unlocking and seeing new components of other Legacy games, this one is definitely near the top. I would say they did a fantastic job of getting that excitement feeling of unlocking and seeing new things. I will say, though, we're going to start hitting some bumps, and weirdly enough, you can predict most of them when it comes to the movies. You see, this goes over the entire span, I said, from Jurassic Park to Fallen Kingdom. It does not include the last movie. You can look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores. You know that the first in each trilogy tend to be much better than the sequels. And you can sort of see that in the game too. Park has multiple chapters dedicated to it, and the same thing for World, but less so for their sequels. I feel the idea of building the park, the legacy components, that's what the Park and World initial movies do really well, so that's where you're going to have a lot more fun. And then the other ones are going to have some weird specific stuff that they try to fit in the movie. There are some times where I feel like I wish they stuck more of the story. There is a certain time when like they didn't seem to focus much on this thing versus another thing, which would have worked well. I think sometimes the story and objectives were, this is where the moments like you have no choice but to follow the stories of the movie. They didn't really try to go too far off, but at the same time, legacy games are about making choices, so then it becomes weird if your choice doesn't jive with what happened in the movie. I think this came along them trying to balance that legacy style with the movies and following the story that you know and love. And all of this culminates to Fallen Kingdom, which personally is my least favorite of all of the Jurassic movies. And unfortunately, that doesn't help it here. That is where this ends off. And it affects, I won't say how or what, in case you want to learn, but if you didn't know, some legacy games are unplayable or finished once you finish them. This one has a replayability afterwards. And here, it relies more on Fallen Kingdom for that, because that's the end of your story. And to me, that was a mistake. But the journey there, unlocking everything, placing the stickers, definitely playing through most of Park and the World movies, until near the end, we were having a pretty fun time. I just think the biggest problem is they were trying to balance too many opposite positions. First off, they were trying to balance the Jurassic stories with a legacy game. Legacy games usually have you follow and make choices that are permanent and really rely on you feeling like you've made important choices, but you're also following the movies. So there are times when, because the choices you make may not work well with the movies, or because they wanted you to make a choice, that something didn't work out. In fact, there was one moment that at least I remember being like, oh, it must be there because that's what happened in the movie, and it wasn't there. I don't know. It just felt like jarring at times when it doesn't jive correctly, but at the same time, you want to be able to feel good that you were like, oh, let's choose this choice and this power or something. So that was one tightrope that seemed to get a little shaky at times. The other one is going back to legacy games. They are, I would say, a much more heavier style game mechanic in the sense that you're making permanent decisions that people who are definitely, if you're not well versed in that style of gaming, whatever it is, be it a deck builder legacy or story or whatever it is, you can feel bad if you're not getting a lot of bonuses because you made the wrong permanent choices. And because of that, most of the legacy games I know are never considered gateway games, even if they're based on gateway games. I don't know anyone who even take Pandemic Legacy and be like, hey, this should be one of the first games you try. It's just one of those things that I feel is designed for a more hobbyist sort of game mechanics style. And at the same time, you got, the Jurassic Park license and Funko and Prospero, they're known for their games of taking licenses and making actually fun, enjoyable games that can be those entryway games at big box retail stores. This is the sort of idea behind a lot of their games, so it's how they should look at them. So when they take on Legacy, they're trying to attract an audience that usually isn't the target for Legacy games. That's also where I think the replayability came back to bite them in the butt, because it's a little hard, because I don't think a lot of people, even hobbyists, I think still have an issue of saying, hey, you're going to play this game and it can't be played after 10 games. So you have to add on that replayability. And here, I think this would have been better if it ended at 11, or at the very least, really tried some different things up. Personally, for me, this is a game I'm going to treat as if the game ended. This is going to be framed. I'm not going to play this one for its replayability. I like what we did with our board, so I'm going to show it off that way. If I want to play a game based on Jurassic Park after this, well, there are plenty of other games, be it literally using the Jurassic Park license or loosely based, similar to Dinosaur Island and World. That all said, the actual journey of this Legacy game was one that I'm happy I had the chance to travel with my friends. And that's what I think you should take away from this. Not that this is a game that is meant to come off your shelf every single time for a game night and to be the best Jurassic Park game out there. Rather, this is one where you're going to have a great experience, hopefully with 2 other people, as you play through the wild, entertaining, sometimes rough stories and world that Jurassic Park and Jurassic World have to offer. Crits and misses for Jurassic World: The Legacy of Isla Nublar. Crits. While you unlock more characters from the Jurassic Park and World movies, you will not always have access to them. This causes you to cycle through characters that you have available between each chapter, but you will still have some way of using the powers of previous characters throughout the game, balancing a great job of forcing you to try out new characters with different abilities, while also still giving you those tried and true ones in case you feel like you really need a specific power. Games are relatively quick, with only lasting 5 rounds. This works really well on multiple levels. First, if a game doesn't go well and you lose, it doesn't feel too bad to start up a new one as you weren't invested multiple hours into that first game. Second, win or lose, this means you're going to be hitting a lot more of those legacy unlocks along the way, or at least you're going to see them quicker, meaning you're going to get that dopamine release of seeing what comes out and being able to change the board. So once again, win or lose, you're going to have a lot more time of you changing and altering everything as you progress through the stories. Connected with the last crit, the pacing, as well as along with just what you unlock, feels extremely rewarding. It's always fun for you to unlock new character powers, as that is an obvious power boost, but depending on how you play the game and research dinosaurs, you can unlock different bonuses to make certain dinosaurs stronger, which will help you survive and therefore not lose as much. And of course, seeing a new dinosaur is always awesome. Misses. As what's common, I believe, with many light cooperative games, there is a bit of randomness in order to add that difficulty. Here, it can be a bit annoying at times of what comes up, be it flipping the number 2 consequence or a dinosaur die roll that just goes poorly. But for me, the biggest one happened in the round 5 cards. And depending on what happened there, because you don't know what's actually printed there, it can feel like you already lost the game because you didn't know what the end game objective or the wrench it threw in your plans could be. Personally, I'd rather lose early on because a lot of bad things happen to consequences rather than flipping over the round 5 card and still technically having actions left, but not thinking we're able to even do anything to stop it. Player count, while it says for 2 to 4, has to be 3. We tried it at 4, I didn't try it at 2, but I can say there is a significant difference, and considering this is a legacy game where you usually want the same people around, I would highly recommend you start off and make sure that you have that group of 3. It's annoying, and I understand hypothetically there aren't a different number of actions depending on player count, but really 3 actions per player is the way to go. I feel they had a hard time trying to balance legacy with the scripts of the Jurassic Park movies, as well as difficulty factor. All 3 of these things want different elements that tend to clash with the other ones, and you can really tell that some moments it dropped the ball. This honestly sort of wraps up, I think, multiple sort of misses, but really I do think it always comes back down to this, be it the really mediocre replayability at the end or the weird changes of the story versus what choices you make. While for me, I did have a great experience overall, in the end, I feel because they're trying to juggle these all at the same time, something had to give, and unfortunately when it does, you can see all 3 elements drop rather than doing a small sacrifice in order to keep one of the other 2 elements solid. When it comes to legacy games, I generally prefer it when they're not replayable, because to me, the journey really is what this is about, not being able to play something over and over. I mean, I don't rewatch every movie over and over. I have certain shows and movies that I do, but some things are good just the time you saw them that one time. It's that moment, it's that experience, and that's what legacy games are to me. Now, if you wanted to add replayability here, unfortunately, I think this would have actually improved a bit if they waited a year or 2 for the last Jurassic World movie. That's not saying because I think that's the best movie of the lot, but rather the idea and core elements of that movie, so to speak, would actually work really well here. All the returning characters, you have the dinosaurs still causing havoc, but not the main villainous focus. It's more of the locusts that are happening through there. That's not a spoiler for the movie. You see them pretty early on, if I recall. The point is, it would feel more like the idea of like what this game, what you'd want of it in replayability in terms of not a very specific storyline, but rather they're dinosaurs, there's things happening, you got to stop them. And of course, if you sort of just made the replayability its own little special chapter block, that probably, I think, also would have been a smarter choice. Just throw cannon to the wind. Yeah, guess what? You're going to be playing with any character. Yeah, sure. The Spinosaurus, the T-Rex, and the Dominus Rex are all partying together. Just have fun with it. That would have been the best thing, because that's playing through it was how it felt for me. I was just having fun seeing all the dinosaurs, seeing all these characters, unlocking them, and just going through the event. In the end, I had fun. I think that's one thing to say about it. I had a fun journey. I didn't have a good ending though. You can let me know, did you back this game and did you play through? Were you disappointed? Did you have a blast playing through it? Let me know your thoughts on all this. And also, does the fact that you think you're a fan of Jurassic Park or World make a difference? Like, that could be it for me. I know the other people like the movies, but I'm the one who buys shirts and stuff and and toys. But they still enjoyed it too. I want to know if this is one of those things where you almost need to be enfranchised with the franchise in order to actually have that enjoyable experience. You can let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know your favorite dinosaur as well from the movies. I mean, there are plenty of awesome dinosaurs and prehistoric creatures, because technically not all the creatures you see are dinosaurs in the movies. But let's stick with ones that you can actually see in the movies. Let me know down there. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you think someone might be interested in this, please share the video with them. And of course, all the other stuff would be hugely grateful. The liking, the sharing, the subscribing, all the stuff that YouTube really enjoys and wants you to smuggle out here in a shaving cream can. And of course, to all my rollers, thank you so much. All of you really help keep this park up and running. But for now, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.